I'm feeling really good today, and it's because it's a Sunday. It's like, have any of you ever been to a gender reveal party? I went to my first last night. It was at my house because my son Zeke and his wife Abby Abby's pregnant, and so we were finding out the gender of the baby last night. It's a boy, so they are naming him Zeal Countryman. Zeal, and we're really excited about that. I'm excited about them being here. They work with another church in town, River Valley, and Zeke usually leads worship. Abby works in the church there too, coordinator, and so they've kind of taken off of their usual duties to be with us today, and I feel really, really good about that. Also, Luke and Haley, my oldest son, are from Nashville. Luke and his fiancee, Haley, are getting married November 1st. They're here for the weekend. We didn't really plan this out. It just kind of happened. But we've got the whole row, and I'm very proud of all 8 of my family members that live there, countrymen and one almost countryman family members there. And so that's part of the reason why I'm feeling so good about being here. Countrymen men, it's been a long tradition for generations to marry strong, faithful Christian women. And I'm thankful for that personally, and for my mom, and for the ones that are coming up next generation. It is Father's Day. I have a dad joke. I thought I needed to do it. I should have gotten Travis. Travis is the pro at this. But just really quick for all of you dads and everyone else who, I don't know that anybody else likes dad jokes except dads, but I married my wife for her looks, but not the ones I've been getting from her lately. So and if you know, you know. So we're in this series in Minnesota as it is in heaven. And the idea about this series is that we are all missional. And the church needs to be missional. And we've got to have this in our DNA. We've got to have this as a part of what we do. You are a missionary. And so everything that Patrick started with, he laid the foundation beautifully. Everything we do needs to be about this. Last week, we got a little bit more practical, a little bit more specific about doing that in your workplace. Today, we're going to get same little practical, little more specific about doing it in your family, bringing shalom to the family. And we are going to speak primarily about the father's role. Again, just like last week, we had some younger people who didn't have jobs yet. We had older people who aren't working, and yet we still talked about that. It applies generally to everyone today. Same thing, it's going to apply generally to everyone because not only are we to bring shalom to our family as fathers, but we're to be spiritual mentors to everyone. So men everywhere, fathers, women. You know, we watched a movie, my wife and I watched a movie recently, about a month ago, called Unsung Hero. True story about the Smallbone family that came from Australia, moved to the States. Rebecca St. James was a Christian artist out of that, and then for King and Country, who are more popular now, came out of that family too, some of the kids. And the title Unsung Heroes really because of the mom, who really held the family together through a lot of hard times. We know that there are a lot of single mothers in our midst. We know that there is a such thing as toxic masculinity, and yet there is a need for intentional fathers. There is a need for father figures. This is not to say a father's role is more important than the mother's, but it may be a bigger issue in our world right now, absent fathers, and so today that will be our emphasis. How important is the role of the father? Got some statistics for you here. Children without fathers are 4 times more likely to live in poverty. They are more likely to suffer emotional and behavioral problems, and they have higher levels of aggressive behavior than children born into married homes. Also, children without fathers, have 2 times the risk of infant mortality. They're more likely to go to prison. Only 1 in 5 prison inmates grew up with their father present. I think that should tell us something. And they are twice as likely to be involved in early sexual activity. So the need is there. And I want to read some scriptures that don't speak just to fathers, but they speak to all of us, and especially male roles, maybe, not really especially male roles. These scriptures kind of speak about that, but it's really everyone about being a spiritual mentor. So 1 Corinthians chapter 4:15, for even if you had 10,000 others to teach you about Christ, you have only one spiritual father. For I became your father in Christ Jesus when I preached the good news to you. Paul is writing this to the Corinthians and saying, I became that spiritual father to you. And then he goes on to say in the next 2 verses, so I urge you to imitate me. That's why I have sent Timothy, my beloved and faithful child in the Lord. He will remind you of how I follow Christ Jesus, just as I teach in all the churches wherever I go. So Paul, he has this example of being a spiritual father to the Corinthians. He has this example of being a spiritual father to Timothy. And we don't believe Timothy had one. He learned his faith from his mother and his grandmother. And yet, so the role of spiritual mentor is for all of us. Whether we're fathers with biological kids, adopted kids, with no kids, if we're just males, or if we're a woman who has to be a spiritual mentor and teacher. So you're going to be able to gain that from this lesson for sure. Job chapter 29, listen to this, pay attention. It speaks loudly, I think, to how we can all be used by God. All who heard me praised me. All who saw me spoke well of me, for I assisted the poor in their need and the orphans who required help. I helped those without hope, and they blessed me. And I caused the widows' hearts to sing for joy. Everything I did was honest. Righteousness covered me like a robe, and I wore justice like a turban. I served as eyes for the blind and feet for the lame. I was a father to the poor and assisted strangers who needed help. There's a role of spiritual leadership, of being a mentor, of just caring for people and taking on that role of leadership in that way to help people, whether it's the poor, whether it's those that need teaching, whatever it is. And the Bible clearly talks about that. There's a story of a Jewish rabbi. I borrowed this from a book of a friend of mine that I'm going to talk about later. And there's an old Jewish rabbi, and he's leaving Capernaum. He travels several hours to Capernaum. He gets there, he does his shopping, and then he's leaving there to go back home. It's late, he's not paying attention. He ends up getting lost. It gets dark. What should be several hours turns into almost all night, and he does not know where he is, and he's mad at himself, and he's, how could I, not been paying attention? I took the wrong way or whatever. He ends up back, and he sees this Roman guard, this Roman sentry. And the Roman sentry cries out, and he says, "Who are you, and why are you here?" And then the rabbi realizes, I've walked in a big circle. I'm back to the gate of Capernaum now. And then he asks, being a good rabbi, he answers the question, "Who are you and why are you here?" with a question. And he asks the centurion, he says, "How much are you paid to stand there all day and ask these 2 questions?" And the Roman sentry says, I'm paid, 2 silver coins a day. And he says, I will pay you 4 silver coins a day to stand outside my door and ask me those same questions every day. Who are you and why are you here? We get distracted in this life. There's so many things going on that sometimes we miss the most important questions. Who are you and why are you here? Fathers are here for provision, for protection. And those 2 things are not unimportant. Jesus, when he's praying the Lord's Prayer, says, Father, give us our daily bread, protect us from the evil one. So provision and protection are very important roles. And the passage we read in Job, you can do that even for people who are not your children. So those are very important, but I really think that the next 2 things I've got listed, identity and direction, this spiritual direction, this identity. That's what a father passes on to their children. That's what a spiritual mentor passes on to the ones that they're working with, which is so important, which is what God says we need. And that is really the scripture that Travis read for us. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4. Listen, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. In other words, we get distracted by a lot of things, and a lot of other things try to take that place. You must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength. And you must commit yourselves wholeheartedly. So the next slide, next verse. You must commit yourselves wholeheartedly to these commands that I am giving you today. Repeat them again and again to your children. Talk about them when you are at home and when you are on the road and when you are going to bed and when you are getting up. The point is, this needs to be a daily thing. This needs to be, if you are a spiritual mentor, if you are taking on this role, it needs to be intentional. It doesn't happen by accident. If you're going to pass this along to your kids, to the next generation, you've got to work at it. It's got to be a plan. Now, it can just happen when you're doing your daily activities, but you've got to have it in your mind so that it comes out in your life and in your words to them. And I think that's what Deuteronomy, and again, this passage, the Shema, which is just the word for hear, for listen, it is there. I mean, everything hinges on this. So these are Moses' first words after getting the Ten Commandments. These are Moses' first words. These are the words. The rest of Deuteronomy is all these other laws and things that God is going to say are important for you to live by. But Jesus said everything hinges on this. This is so important. And I think we understand, love the Lord our God with all our heart, but do we, believing it, it's not the same if we're not doing these verses 6 and 7, where it's become a part of our life. You may have heard more is caught than taught. Fathers, if you are not intentionally saying things, giving spiritual direction, they're going to catch whatever you are doing and whatever's most important to you. They're going to see that. And if it's not God, they're going to catch something else instead of what you may be teaching. What do you remember from your family? What do you remember growing up? I remember a lot of things in my family. We went to church all the time. We went to, everything all the time with church-related things. But it wasn't just that. My family surrounded themselves with friends and families that were also believers. And I remember we did fun things all the time. We vacationed together. They bought property together. We would be at somebody's house just having pizza and whatever, and then praying, and then we would pray for something specific. And at home, my mom and dad would do like family devotionals. Again, intentional things. What rhythms are you creating in your family that will cultivate an environment of faith? There's family, there's closeness, there's good family. Then there's this environment of faith that we need to cultivate that maybe we're doing, maybe we're not doing. What rhythms are you creating in your family? Give that some thought. Put it into practice. And I think we believe the first two verses of this. Listen, O Israel, love, Lord our God, Lord is one. You must love him with all your heart. But we fall short if we're not putting it in our lives like the rest of the verses, that everything we do, all a part of our life is being wrapped up in that. Joshua chapter 24, verse 15 says, but if you refuse, this is Joshua, but if you refuse to serve the Lord, then choose today whom you will serve. Would you prefer the God of your ancestors serve beyond the Euphrates, or will it be the gods of the Amorites in whose land you now live? But as for me and my family, we will serve the Lord. What's interesting about that is that he's talking about, Abraham, and Abraham's father was not a believer. Abraham's father worshiped other gods. You can see that earlier in the chapter in verse 4 and 5. You also can see it in Joshua chapter 6, where it talks about him having Asherah poles and, worship Baal, false gods of the natures. And it changed. It changed from Abraham's father to Abraham, and now it's being passed down. And now it's going to Joshua, and Joshua's trying to tell them, pass that down to your family. So if you've got families, this has got to be a part of it. If you don't have a family yet, this has got to be in your mind before, so that this is number one and you're not distracted. This kind of commitment that Moses asked them, that Joshua is asking of them, the Israelites, it takes courage, because people all around them were not doing that. People all around them were worshiping other gods. Sometimes our culture is the same way. It takes courage to stand up and do what Scripture is asking us to do, what God is asking us to do. Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger by the way you treat them. Rather, bring them up with the discipline and instruction that comes from the Lord. Specific to fathers, right, in this chapter. Right before that, he talks about other groups and not fathers. But here at the beginning of chapter 6. Then later in chapter 6, in verse 13, he says, therefore put on every piece of God's armor so you'll be able to resist the enemy in the time of evil. Then after the battle, you will still be standing firm. And he continues the rest of chapter 6 talking about the full armor of God. It takes courage because we're in a battle. It takes courage because there is an adversary. There is an enemy. And he is trying to distract us, and he is trying to cause problems in us, in the people that we are mentoring, in our families, and we need help to rely on God. We are warriors in a battle. Paul tells Timothy, when he's about to die in 2 Timothy, I fought the good fight. This is a part of our lives, and it is a battle, it is a fight, it does take courage, but we have to make a decision to live our lives in such a way where God will be able to bless the next generation, as we've seen in these verses. Next slide. Have you guys seen this movie? Joey, Frederick, and I used to laugh at our wives for watching this. Wind Calls the Heart. I don't know. They're on season, 13, 14. I don't know. It's been around for a long time now. I say used to. Joey, I don't know about you, but I got kind of bit and caught up in it. It'd just be on in the background, and I'm doing other stuff, and Tina's watching. And then I started watching, a few seasons in, and then she made me go back and watch all the others. But I kind of wanted to at that point. Because if you haven't seen it, it's set in like 1920s Canada, somewhere around there. And it's rural, small town. But what's good about it is the community and the focus of all the members on each other, on community. So I highly recommend it. I think it's on Hallmark or something. We pay the $5.99 a month so that we can watch it. It's worth it. All right. So in this picture, I don't know what year it was from, but it's one of the more recent seasons. The little guy is Little Jack, the little boy. All right, and I'm not going to give you the whole story in case some of you haven't seen it and you want to start watching it. But yeah, some of you are laughing. You've watched it. Little Jack, the guy on the far left, and it's far left over here, even though I'm facing you, is Bill Avery. He was the sheriff turned judge, or Mountie turned sheriff turned judge. Anyway, good guy. Leland Coulter is far right, and then that's his wife next to him, Rosemary, which if she wasn't the comedic, part of the show, I wouldn't like her in real life. But she is hilarious in the show, and she was really sweet. Anyway, pretty much everybody in the show is. The reason I put this up there is because, so the lady in the middle, spoiler alert. Okay, I won't. All right, never mind. Little Jack needs help, and Bill Avery on the left is selected as his godfather. Leland Coulter on the right and Rosemary is selected as the guardians. And there's this one episode where this is being, and it's lovely, it's sweet, and then Bill and Leland are having coffee, and they're like, "What are we supposed to do? I don't know. What are we, as godparents and as guardian?" And I'm here to tell you that this is a God-given thing. a role of being a spiritual father, spiritual mentor, helping people, helping young people who may not have that father, helping people who need help, whether it's poor or whatever. And so how are we going to help them do that? I've got these two questions for you. Who have you surrounded yourself with who can kind of be that mentor for you and help you with that? And who have you chosen to mentor? If you don't have anybody on that list, you need to put somebody on that list. You need to make a list. That's a part of our DNA. You're a missionary. It's a part of our DNA to help the poor or mentor or teach. You need help doing that, but you need to have people. I mean, I think everybody should have a Paul, a Barnabas, and a Timothy. Paul, who's teaching them, Barnabas, who's encouraging them, and Timothy, who you're mentoring. Who have you surrounded yourself with? Who have you chosen to mentor? I hope you go away asking yourself this and coming up with a list if you don't have one. Matthew chapter 6, 19 through 21. Don't store up treasures here on earth where moths eat them and rust destroys them and where thieves break in and steal. Store your treasures in heaven where moths and rust cannot destroy and thieves do not break in and steal. Wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will also be. We get distracted by treasures of this earth and we pick the wrong ones. And most of the time, I don't think it's even intentional. We just kind of get, it's the path of least resistance. It's our culture. And yet, God is saying something different. He's saying, you're a missionary. Bring shalom to the world. Bring shalom to your family. Mentor. Look for people in need. And do this intentionally. And if your treasure is there, then it'll come more naturally. This next picture. White shirt, Steve Allen. Red shirt will go unnamed. Okay, it's me. This is when we were younger. I like the picture because it looks like we're jumping really, really high, and I don't really know. This is when we were younger. We had like all of it. This one of my good friends. We went to Thailand together, 4 couples, and this is at actually Tina's parents' house. I don't know if this is right after we got married or right before we got married. Steve loved to play basketball, and that's why I have the picture there. The next picture is from last fall. I went to Colorado Springs, and this is really the first time that the 4 of us from our time in Thailand together got back together since we left Thailand. I'd been with each of them, but the 4 of us hadn't been together. What happened was so Steve Allen is in the middle. He now has ALS. He's had ALS for 10 years. Usually, average lifespan after you are diagnosed with ALS is 3 years, average lifespan. He's had it for 10. He no longer can move his arms, legs, anything but his head. And yet, he works every day as a spiritual mentor. Somebody has to help him get dressed. He doesn't even take anything by mouth anymore. There's a port, and he takes in, liquid food, nourishment through a port, and it's just because of the ALS, everything is shutting down. He's to that point. And yet, he is such a spiritual mentor with such great intentionality and heart, not only for his own family, but a lot of others. So the next picture. So last fall, what happened was his sons, Michael and Canaan, called me and said, hey, Dad's not doing well. And he had been to the hospital a few times recently, and that was before he had the intravenous feeding. So it turned out that was the problem. He was almost dying from trying to eat. And then once they started doing the feeding through the port, it actually helped him. But these guys, so our Thai team and a bunch of other guys that he had mentored and recently got together, met him out there in Colorado Springs, and we had, like 3 days together, and it was great. We had communion together every day, even though it was like, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, which I think in Acts 2, when it says they met together every day, I think when it says they broke bread, I think they had communion every day together when they met. Anyway, we'll move on. this group of guys, some of them I did not know and had not met because they were mentors or mentees that Steve had done through different things in his life later after he had come back from Thailand. It's what he still does. He gets online and he does it spiritually. He does this life coaching, spiritual mentorship. And these guys have learned so much from him and felt so much from him that they had come back to meet with him. And so it was a really special weekend. All of these guys have really special stories, and I won't go into them. So the next picture is a picture of a book, and so we have these books. I got 100 copies of these books, 10,000 Fathers. It was written in 2021. Steve wrote it, and so we've got for every adult male, okay? Doesn't matter, fathers, you can use this book to be a spiritual mentor. So for right now, I've got 100 copies for every adult male. We want to give it, so they're out by the Woodbury table. We want to make sure you do not leave here without one of the books. One of the guys, Lou Engle, wrote on here, some write books, some live out their books before they write them. And he's just talking about Steve's life. And he lived it out in his life. And then he wrote these things down. And he shares a lot of experience from his own life of people we know. The best thing about it is it's a 31-day devotional. So I just did it again in May. And I did it in May because there's 31 days in May. And day one, and I started day one, and if I miss a day, Friday or Saturday or something, or Sunday, if I miss a day, then on Monday I make it up. That was how I chose to do it. When you guys get the books, you can start tomorrow, you can start today, you can do it however you want, but I really encourage you to do it, because if you go through these books for 31 days, he has a little story, that it doesn't take 5 minutes to read it, probably 3 or 4. And then he has a prayer, and then he has some questions for you to discuss in your mind, and then he has a prayer, and then he has some resources, some other books that you can look at. Then he has some scriptures. He has 4 or 5 or 6 scriptures that you can look at in your Bible and read, and they apply to that. And some of them are repeated on certain days because that helps you remember and helps it kind of sink in. But if you do that for 31 days, now you're being intentional with your spiritual mentorship. And it's a lot easier to pass it along and be in the habit. So, it's a good book. It's meaningful in what God will do with you while you read it. Okay, while you practice it, if you do. So we've got those, and we want everyone to have one. Isaiah chapter 55, verse 3 says this: "Come to me with your ears wide open. Listen, and you will find life. I will make an everlasting covenant with you. I will give you all the unfailing love I promised to David." God is writing this, and he's saying, it's available. All you got to do is come and take it in. All you got to do is listen. And God is this amazing love that he just wants to give all of you. All right. What if you and your father have never been close? That happens too much. We just looked at the statistics. What if you and your father have never been close and you didn't have the blessings in that? Well, I've got a good example. One of the guys that was at that week, I met him. Next picture. His name is Zach Garza. Zach does this youcanmentor.com. He had this Forerunner mentoring program because of his relationship with Steve Allen. Because of Steve Allen mentoring him, he now does this for hundreds and hundreds of kids, and it's just growing. And he was in Dallas. Now he's moved to Waco. That's where he is now. He is now married. He now has a family. He now has his own kids, but he's working with a lot of other kids in the community through these programs, and he's written a book too. Really nice guy. He's about 6'8". I mean, intimidating just standing beside him, especially for me. What I would like to tell you is that Zach never knew his father. So it really doesn't matter whether you have been blessed like I was with a family, and Steve Allen, and he talks a lot about that. Because Steve chose to pour into Zach, changed Zach's life. He's got a testimony in the book about that at the end. And then now he is doing that for others. This last year, most recent, the next picture, Zach was named the 2023 Abilene Christian University Young Alumnus of the Year because he's made such an impact. And at the meeting last fall, he would say, wouldn't have happened if Steve, who has ALS and can't move, right? If he can do it, right? None of that would have happened if Steve had not been intentional in showing Zach Garza, who did not have any of this in his life, in his DNA. In fact, Zach said, when the word father came up, I would get bitter and angry. I mean, it was terrible for him because he had just grown, because his father had abandoned him. He never knew his father. He had just grown up, being angry about that. And it was like a trigger. And yet, now, he says, Steve Allen showed up. He says, Steve Allen asked him, who are you pouring your life into? And just the intentionality of that made him, Zach, try to do those things, and he started doing it, and now he's done millions of things. Well, maybe not millions. He's done a lot for the communities in which he's lived. All right, so we've got this word legacy. And legacy is a word that usually we don't use until somebody has passed on, until somebody has died, and then we start talking about their legacy. But I want to remind you that you would not have a legacy when you die if you had not done something about it when you were living, when you were alive. And that's really what I'm trying to get across to you. Be intentional about it. Last night we had the gender reveal in my backyard. Here's a picture of my backyard. There's 3 dogs in this picture. 2 of them are together, so you kind of can't notice. There's one back in the back, a gold one, and she is available, by the way. She really is. She really is a great dog, but her and one of the other dogs don't get along anymore because of a little fight they had, and we can't get them back together. So we've got them on different levels of our house. It's a mess. Anyway, I'm showing you this picture of the backyard because in the fall there's red oaks, and there's one behind me, and then there's in the picture, and there's these 2 big ones you can see. We had another one that died before we moved in, so it was already dead, huge. I take this because the one on the left in the picture now has died. These huge oak trees, I don't know how old they are. I had 4 different people come out and look at them and talk to me about them, and there's like, who knows, 100 years old, whatever. And they said, I don't think it was oak wilt, it might have been, but they think it's just they've reached the end of their lifestyle. Next picture. When is the best time to plant an oak tree? The answer, the best time to plant an oak tree was 20 years ago. Okay? And I am thankful that, so here's the dog that I said was available. So right beside her is this little oak tree that somebody planted before. So just to the left of that, this other one is dead. And yet somebody took the time to plant this tree years ago. I don't know. And now it's a lot taller than that. Just in the 2 years we've lived there, less than 2 years. I'm so thankful that somebody has planted 3 or 4 little oak trees in my backyard because we've had 2 die now. So I heard one of the answers. There's an old Chinese proverb that says the best time to plant an oak tree was 20 years ago. The rest of that Chinese proverb says the second best time is today. And that's what I want you to do. Become a spiritual mentor. Become a spiritual father. And if you're a father and you have children, decide today that I am going to be intentional about leading my kids, providing, yes, protecting, yes, but giving them this spiritual identity, giving them this spiritual direction, because that's most important. Got a 1-minute video for you, and then we're going to done. So if the tech booth can play this little 1-minute video.
Keep the gas. Keep the gas. Keep the gas. There we go. Now we're gonna speed it up a little. Just keep where you're at. Keep on the gas. Keep on the gas. Keep on the gas. All right, ready? Yes. You're gonna go clutch, off the gas and push the clutch. Off the gas, push the clutch. Now you're going to go up to third. Up, over, third. Now gas. Even transition. Ready? There you go, 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 go. Yay! You got it, boy! Keep going. That's what I'm talking about right there. Keep going. Love you, buddy. Keep going, keep going. So you got a car to your left. All right, they're going straight. Keep going. Keep giving it gas. Keep giving it gas. All right, now you just keep driving in a circle. You're good, dude. All righty.
If you think that video is about teaching somebody how to drive a standard shift pickup truck, it's not. You missed the whole point. I love his little laugh. Ha ha! And he's like, yes! And then what does he say? I love you, Dad. I don't know if you heard that part. He's excited about driving. But what's important to him? Being a spiritual mentor and being a spiritual father, it's about spending time. Like Deuteronomy 6 says, in the morning, when you lie down, when you get up, when you're on the road. It's intentionally spending time together, and you don't have to know everything to do. You can surround yourselves with people to help you. But it's really about love and grace, not provoking your children to anger. Being a father is passing along spiritual identity of our Heavenly Father and the spiritual direction that He wants us to take. And it's about love and grace, and that's what they catch. That's what they catch. I'm going to invite the praise team back up. Got one last verse to share with you. It's not on the screen. This is from Malachi chapter 4, verses 5 and 6. Look, I am sending you the prophet Elijah before the great and dreadful day of the Lord arrives. Listen, verse 6. His preaching will turn the hearts of fathers to their children and the hearts of children to their fathers. Otherwise, I will come and strike the land with a curse. So that's from Malachi chapter 4. It's repeated in the New Testament in Luke. God is doing this. Prophet Elijah, his preaching will turn the hearts of the fathers to the children and the hearts of the children to their fathers. That's our prayer. And prayer works, and yet we have to be intentional as people of faith to pass that along to the next generation, whether it's our kids or whether it's someone that we are mentoring spiritually. Let's stand and let's sing.